Next up, let's try coding. I wanted to do a classic Space Invaders game, so Pygame, wow. Again, basically almost 500 tokens per second. Yeah, I mean, okay. I'm not exactly sure why they're not going down. So we're going to give this like a, like a C- or something like that. Hey, y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. Yesterday, I took the day off and we went and picked strawberries, and then we went to see a Gwinnett County Stripers baseball game. So go Stripers. Got the shirt. I swear it looks like there's two P's in there, and that makes a very, very different word, but I guess it's supposed to be like bass, like striped bass. Anyway, I don't know. But of course, the world of AI never slows down, and there is a huge release from Meta. Llama 4 just came out. I'm going to cover that for the most part in today's video. First, a quick shout out to Tesla's FSD team. FSD supervised in Europe pending regulatory approval. As you can see, I said a joke, hopefully they'll get it before 2049. But with a regulatory approval, that would be fantastic. It'll be quite the game changer. I swear, people in Europe, you'll finally realize what we've been crowing about in the United States. It's pretty darn amazing. You can see it's actually got reverse in it and everything, which is really, really cool. So yeah, you can see it's handling European roads. It's handling all of this stuff. Of course, Tesla's FSD just came out in China as well, and they did very little training in China because of the data export-import issues. So apparently, mostly this is running off of US and Canada-based FSD, which is very, very impressive. But anyway, you can see it's working fine, and it's working really well in European roads. It's dealing with bicyclists, pedestrians, etc., etc. So anyway, a big shout out. I will cover this in more detail when there is more news to cover. It's a little, so there's not that much to do at this point, except look at this really cool video. But hopefully one of the countries in the EU will approve this relatively quickly, and we will have some experience from people in the European Union. If anybody lives there and when you get access to it, you want to talk about your experience with full self-driving in Europe, definitely hit me up in X or in the comments below, because I would love to connect with you, because it will be really cool to talk about this when it comes out. Alrighty, and on to the big news of the day. Jan LeCun posted 17 hours ago as I record this. Boom! The Llama 4 brood is out, and it is a brood. So we're going to get into this. We have Llama 4 Behemoth, which is not out yet. We have Llama 4 Maverick, which is their mid-level model, and we have Llama 4 Scout, which is their smallest model, but it's still a very, very large model. And with a huge thank you to grok.com, we actually have access to Llama 4 Scout, so I am going to test it after we go through some of the details about these models. So let's go to the blog post from yesterday. There are two big ticket items to take away from this. Number one, Llama 4 is now natively multimodal, which means it deals with video and text and audio, etc. It can, I believe, input and output all of that stuff. So that is really, really cool. Number two, this is not a reasoning model. This is a mixture of experts model. This is like the difference, for example, between DeepSeek's V1 and R1. V1 is not a reasoning model. R1 is a reasoning model. Or ChatGPT 4.0, which is not a reasoning model, versus ChatGPT 0.1, which is a reasoning model. So those are the sort of equivalents. Now, if you're worried that Meta did not decide to do a reasoning model with this go-round, this is llama.com/llama4-reasoning-is-coming, and it says coming soon. So you got a picture of a reasoning llama here. The likelihood is that they will do just like what OpenAI did with ChatGPT, and like DeepSeek has done with their V1/R1 models, and that is that they will use their Behemoth model to train a reasoning model out of it. You need to be able to create a lot of synthetic data in order to train a reasoning model based on reinforcement learning. This is what we have learned over time from OpenAI and from DeepSeek in particular, and from other companies as well. But you need to have that baseline model that's really good at creating synthetic data, and my assumption is that Llama 4 Behemoth will actually be really good at that, and will therefore allow a reasoning model to be trained, and we will see it, as it says right here, coming soon. All right, so what do we get in the herd of Llama 4 here now? We get Llama 4 Behemoth, which will have 16 experts. So this is a mixture of experts. It splits up jobs into 16 different expert categories. I believe one of those categories is also what they call the gator, or the router, or something like that. It's the thing that decides where to send off the request to, which expert is the most expert in a certain area. That is interesting. So anyway, you have 16 experts with 288 billion active parameters at any given time, for a total of 2 trillion total parameters. So this is a beastly model, and you can see it says it's the most intelligent teacher model for distillation. We're going to get to that in just a second. But basically, while Meta will release the open weights for people, this is really for enterprise. It's not really for users. It's way too big to run on anything shy of, industrial grade data centers. So this is not for most of us, and it is still cooking at this point. Supposedly it has not done training because it is a very, very large beast of a model, and I'm sure is costing a lot of money to do training. So onward to Llama 4 Maverick, which you can actually download today if you are interested. It has 17 billion active parameters at any given time with a mixture of 128 experts. So it has 128, possible experts. Imagine if you had a company with 128 expert people in their domain, and you as the CEO of the company was like, oh, this job is for like you 2 experts, or this job is for you 4 experts. You can send it off like that. At any given time, each of these experts can activate 17 billion parameters, which means that it's activating those parameters simultaneously. So you're never actually activating the whole thing at once, which is a good thing because it runs a lot faster and cheaper. But anyway, that creates a total of 400 billion total parameters, or half a trillion almost. And as you can read here, it has a native multimodal with 1 million context length. So that means it's able to track 1 million tokens at one time and do it multimodally. So it can do the tokens as video tokens, it can do it as audio tokens, it can do it as text tokens, etc. So let's now move down to Llama 4 Scout, which is actually a very big model. So if you've used Llama before, probably the 70 billion parameter model, or Llama 70B, 3.3 70B, whatever, that is the model that most people have used because it's the best sort of mixture of enough parameters to be able to be useful, but at the same time be able to run on a local machine or something. It is apparent that maybe with quantization, I'll be able to run this on my now quite aging Mac Studio. It's only got 64 gigs of RAM, so we will see. But anyway, supposedly Macs are really, really good at running this stuff. If not, it might finally be the excuse I need to buy a new Mac Studio. Anywho, you've got 17 billion active parameters with a mixture of 16 experts. So like Behemoth, it's got 16 experts. I asked it itself in Grok what its experts were. I'm not sure if it didn't hallucinate, but I'll tell you what it answered in just a second. But it has a total of 109 billion parameters. So that's the parameter count, which is significantly larger than 70 billion parameters. But the cool part about this is it will run much more efficiently because it's only activating 17 billion at a time. So as opposed to Llama 70B, which always had to activate 70 billion parameters all the time, and that reduced the speed at which it could run, this is only activating a certain number of parameters at any given time. So even though it's a larger model and it will take more room to fit in memory, it should run significantly faster. And on Grok, it was running very, very quickly. So as we test it, I will show you that. And here's the mind-blowing part about Llama 4 Scout, an industry-leading 10 million context length. And what that means is you have 10 million tokens in your context window. What I expect this will do is just remove the need for tokenization schemes entirely. People will just tokenize based on letters. So currently what you have to do in order to keep the context window small is tokenize on partial words, like the word walking is W-A-L-K, walk is 1 token and ing is another token, or strawberry, which famously these models couldn't track the number of R's in it. Well, that was because it was 2 tokens. So you had the word straw, which had 1 R in it, and then berry that had 2 R's in it, and it couldn't really track the R's across that because it was tokenized. All that stuff is going to go out the window. Just tokenize based on letters, so S-T-R-A-W-B-E-R, that kind of thing. It'll just tokenize on letters because there's no reason to tokenize on full word tokens anymore because you've got a 10 million context length. So my prediction is, at least for Scout, we will see people starting to tokenize on individual letters rather than tokenizing on words. You get rid of a whole bunch of embedding scheme craziness. You get rid of a lot of difficulties that accrue when you have to tokenize based on words. And so this 10 million context window is going to be a really huge deal. That's my prediction, of course. We haven't seen that arise yet, but I predict that will happen. So what did Llama say about its mixture of experts? It says it has linguistic experts. It has 3 of those: syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. It also has domain-specific experts, so in other words, knowledge about things like that. It has style and tone experts, and it has task-specific experts like question and answering retrieval, text classification, and text generation and summarization. Then it has the gating, sort of thing that keeps track of where stuff is supposed to go. And we'll talk more about that. The really interesting thing, and the reason I think this is hallucinating, is that there was no mention whatsoever about a coding expert or anything. And I can't imagine that this thing doesn't have a coding expert. So, take that with a grain of salt. That's what Llama responded to me about the mixture of experts it has, but that only adds up to 12 anyway. It's not 16. 16. And, so anyway, that's what it said. I think that sounds relatively reasonable, but I can't imagine they wouldn't have a coding expert as well. So some key takeaways. Number one, they're sharing their first model, so they will have more. And obviously there will be a reasoning model because they promised that basically. Next up is Llama 4 Scout. They say it's the best model in its class, blah, 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 You know me, I don't care particularly much about benchmarks because you can make them go any way you want. But the important part here is more powerful than all previous generation Llama models, including the large Llama models apparently, while fitting into a single NVIDIA H100 GPU. So it doesn't have to be split across GPUs. That makes it much, much easier to run. And if you quantize it even more, perhaps you'll be able to squeeze it down into a consumer machine. And then, of course, the context window of 10 million, which is absolutely crazy. Next up, we have Llama 4 Maverick, which has the 17 billion active parameters. It achieves comparable results to the new DeepSeek V3, which has just come out. I haven't even had a chance to test it yet, on reasoning and coding at less than half the active parameters. That's a really, really cool thing that it does that. Llama 4 Maverick also offers a best-in-class performance to cost ratio with an experimental chat version scoring an ELO of 1417. The big thing here is low cost, low cost, low cost. When we look at the cost of all of these, they're actually relatively competitive except for ChatGPT. That is way, way, way out. It's like a 10x increase in cost from the rest of these models, and OpenAI is going to have to reduce the cost, or else these other companies are just going to eat their lunch. And then these models are distilled from Llama 4 Behemoth, a 288 billion active parameter model that's active with 2 trillion parameters total. And distillation basically is just a teacher and a student. You have a teacher model, which is super smart like this, but also requires massive infrastructure to run. And then you have these smaller student models. You can think of it as like a child or something, right? You've got the teacher who is instilling this knowledge going like, no, that's not the right answer. Yes, that's the right answer. So it's teaching these smaller models to be smarter than they would normally have the right to be because they don't have that many parameters, but they can learn from a very, very smart teacher. It'd be like if you had like Einstein as your teacher or something, right? You're probably going to learn more physics than you would if you had a relatively inadequate person who only had like an undergraduate degree in physics or something, right? You're going to learn more from an expert like that as long as they're a good teacher. So anyway, that is the point of distillation, is you have a teacher and a student. The students are much smaller and lighter and run faster, and they learn to be almost as smart as the expert model and run in a much more efficient manner. And they say that while Llama 4 Behemoth is still training, it outperforms GPT 4.5, which is ChatGPT's latest non-reasoning model, Claude Sonnet 3.7, which is their latest non-reasoning model, and Gemini 2.0 Pro on several STEM benchmarks. So Gemini 2.5 is, I would consider, a reasoning model, so they don't compare it there. You also notice that they don't compare it against O3 Mini or O1 or something, because those are reasoning models. They are very, very different than non-reasoning models, but it's wiping the floor with these non-reasoning models. So that's really, really cool to see. And then a quick note here, we continue to believe that openness drives innovation and is good for developers, good for Meta, and good for the world. Their open source is not a standard MIT open source license. However, it is very restrictive. There's a lot of weird caveats with it. So while Meta claims openness, it's a significantly less open model than many other ones, and that causes a lot of people consternation. I don't think for most users it's going to cause a lot of problems, but if you're a really big time user and you want to fine-tune or retrain these models, then the licensing could become an issue. So just pay attention to that. That's something to keep an eye on. So they then go on to explain their pre-training. They say that our new Llama 4 models are the first models that use Mixture of Experts. They're actually way behind, because Mixture of Experts has been out for quite a while. In Mixture of Experts models, a single token activates only a fraction of the total parameters, so you get much more efficiency than running the entire stack all the time. So you can see here that you get a new token comes in, you get attention, you get a router that goes like, where does this need to go? It goes to whichever experts it needs to go to. Then it goes to a shared expert, and you get kind of a voting system, a weighted average to see what the best answer is, and then you pop out the next token. Then very importantly, Llama 4 models are designed with native multimodality, incorporating early fusion, so it fuses the information early, the multimodal information, to seamlessly integrate text and vision tokens into a unified model backbone. And what that means is that it's just really, really good at things like video and stuff. And then you can see from their post-training information that Maverick is their quote workhorse model. So Scout is the little guy that should be able to run on edge compute. Maverick is the one that they are proposing to be the one that is going to be the most used model. And of course, as I said previously, Behemoth is just too big for most people to use. That's only going to be very, very large enterprises and used to train other models, more than likely. And then, as Meta says, the biggest challenge while post-training the Llama 4 Maverick model, so again, they're talking about that specifically, was maintaining a balance between multiple input modalities, in other words, text, video, etc., reasoning, and conversational abilities. And they go into how they do this. I, of course, will leave a link to this in the description so you can read the full blog because it is way too long for me to go through all of the details here. But anyway, they go into how they resolve this issue. Next, they go into the benchmarks. You can see that they say they do better than everybody else, so read the benchmarks if you care. The only one I really care about is the cost per million tokens. So here you can see that Llama 4 Maverick averages 19 cents to 49 cents, depending probably on who is operating this and everything. You can download this and run this on your own computer, so it can cost you basically the cost of electricity plus the cost of your computers if you want. Now remember, this is Maverick, this is not Scout, so it's not the super mini model. It will take some significant iron to run this, but anyway, 19 cents to 49 cents, that's in the realm of Gemini 2.0 Flash, which is a very, very cheap model. DeepSeek V3.1, 48 cents. So it's in that realm. So like I said, these are all relatively competitive. And then you've got ChatGPT 4.0, which is $4.38. So like an order of magnitude more than these other models. That's a pretty ridiculous price. And then 4.5 is even more money than that. So clearly OpenAI is going to have to reduce their prices to remain competitive because these other prices are just so much cheaper. And then they talk about long context and the ability for these models to be extremely effective at long context. Llama 4 Scout is both pre-trained and post-trained with a 256,000 context length. So it's a huge context length for it to be training on constantly, which means that it's just used to seeing gigantic windows of information, which empowers the base model with advanced length generalization capability. We present compelling results in tasks such as the needle in a haystack retrieval, and we will try that today, for text as well as cumulative negative log likelihoods over 10 million tokens of code. So code is clearly part of it, even though it didn't mention that as one of their experts. A key innovation in the Llama 4 architecture is the use of interleaved attention layers without positional embeddings. That's really interesting. I don't know how they did that. Additionally, we employ inference time temperature scaling of attention to enhance length generalization. We call this the iRope architecture, where I stands for interleaved attention layers, highlighting the long-term goal of supporting infinite context length, and rope refers to the rotary position employed in most layers. So infinite context length is really interesting. I think that they're really going for that. Zuckerberg actually said we're going for, basically infinite context length. So go Meta for doing that. It would be great not to have to worry about these context windows. Just imagine being able to carry on a conversation with one of these models for years. And the thing remembers everything that you said, everything that it said for years and years and years. An infinite context window. That's going to allow these models to become much more personalized to you because the conversation is just an ongoing conversation. It knows you, you know it. That's the kind of thing we can look forward to in the future. That's really cool. So let's take a look at the results of the needle in a haystack. You can see Llama 4 Maverick up to 1 million tokens with only 2 failures. The white is failures. That is pretty impressive. This is insane. Llama 4 Scout had a context length. I think this is tokens of text, but 10 million tokens with 0 failures. That's just kind of incredible that it just didn't have any failures up to 10 million tokens. So that's really amazing. And then you can see here that the video length, we have 20 hours of video for Llama 4 Scout. So that is a massive, massive amount of video being ingested and only 2 failures. So really, really impressive performance. I expect it will do very well on my needle in a haystack test that has really stumped previous models. Alrighty, so let's test this beast out. So again, I'm on grok.com. It's amazing that they allow me to do this. Thank you so much to Grok, G-R-O-Q. Notice up here, I've got Llama 4 Scout. This is, I would consider this an initial release, right? So since Behemoth is still baking, we'll get better versions of this. So a 4.1 will probably come out relatively quickly, but in the meantime, let's go ahead and test this. I have not tested this at all. We're going to skip a couple of the more basic questions so that hopefully I don't hit any rate limitations. Let's try a logic question. This is a more difficult one. Susan and Lisa decided to play tennis against each other. They bet $1 on each game they played. Susan won 3 bets and Lisa won $5. How many games did they play? The answer is 11. Let's watch how fast this thing comes up with an answer. 499 tokens, basically 500 tokens per second. So fast fast I can almost not even see it doing that. So the answer is 11. So there we go. And there's its reasoning, or whatever reasoning. So again, this is not a reasoning model, but it's insanely fast and it comes up with the right answer just like basically instantly. Next up, let's try coding. I wanted to do a classic Space Invaders game. So Pygame, wow. Again, basically almost 500 tokens per second. It presented it so quickly. This doesn't look long enough, but we'll go ahead and copy it into VS Code and we will see what happens. So it's actually 100 lines of code. It just did it so fast that I didn't think it was that much. Let's go ahead and play. Fingers crossed. We will, geez, okay, well, that didn't quite work. And so you can see that it didn't actually delete any of the blocks when it shot. So I'm going to give it a couple of error correction and things like that, but it did the game over. It presented the screen more or less like I wanted. It obviously needs to be slower and my guy needs to be able to actually shoot the enemies down. Okay, so I gave it a little information about what to fix. Let's see, I don't know if it's putting it down at the bottom. Oh, up here at the top, and you can see 512 tokens per second. That is a record. So made a few changes, added a couple lines, and let's see if it played. Oh, unexpected indent block, boo. So I'm just cutting and pasting the error in here, and let's see if it'll fix this error. So a little bit slower, but pretty fast still. So let's go ahead and copy this one more time. Not doing particularly well thus far, but we'll see. Yeah, I mean, okay. I'm not exactly sure why they're not going down. So we're going to give this like a, like a C- or something like that. This is very weird that it's going up instead of down now, but we do have a score. We have some stuff. I don't know. So anyway, we'll call that like a C-. It almost did it, but not fantastic. Next up is one I do not expect it to get, which is I wanted to try to decode a cipher. None of the reasoning models really are able to handle this with so little information. But let's see, the final answer is what makes a man turn to a wolf in the dead of night. No, it's actually 7 years ago today. So it thinks it's a Caesar cipher, which is actually pretty close. Let's tell it a Beaufort cipher and let's see if it actually gets it this time. All right, so I said, incorrect. It's a Beaufort cipher. Try again. Let's see if it actually gets it this time. A little bit annoying that Grok is not presenting the information here because it's like, oh my goodness, wow. All right, let's see what it got this time. There is a world of difference. Nope, so it failed on that as well. Again, it's not a reasoning model, so I didn't expect it to do particularly well on this question. All right, so let's test out creativity. Write me a bedtime story about the Space Invaders code you generated earlier for my now 3-year-old grandniece. I had to update that number. Happy birthday, Sky. All right, let's see how it does here. It should do it quickly no matter what. Yeah, again, it's a little bit annoying that it's like, oh my goodness, that was so fast. It just did it before I even saw that. So once upon a time, faraway galaxy, magical kingdom called Pixelonia. All right, the hero of Pixelonia in okay. The bad guys, one day the quest. This is kind of weird because it's like an outline of the story rather than the story itself. But how, thanks to the magical code that Pygame had given her, the code was like a secret recipe. Yeah, I mean, you can see that it's kind of sort of a game, but it's a little bit wishy-washy. It needs to be more narrative fashion. I'm not going to try again. I'm sure you could coax it to do that. But this is definitely less than stellar. It should be able to write a story in a traditional, one paragraph format and create that story. All right, so I asked it to generate an image just to see, and it said, I do not have the capability to generate images. I can create text-based representation. So, oh, okay. So it actually did some ASCII art, so that's interesting. That's rather interesting. So I'm sure it would be able to generate a good prompt for something like that. I thought a wolf howling at the moon on Mars would be kind of cool. So anyway, I'll try that on another one, but I didn't expect that to work either because they had not said that it would generate images. And unfortunately, it also doesn't read images at this point. I think that is a limitation in Grok because Grok can't do that. So if someone hosts Llama on a different service, we probably will be able to input images, but in Grok, it is unable to do that. All right, I'm going to save the needle in a haystack for last because that might blow out my rate limiting. So we'll try some math first. This should not be difficult for it. It's basically converting between centigrade and Celsius. The answer should be D. The answer is D, so that is correct. Alrighty, unfortunately I reached my rate limit on the insane math question, so hopefully it's not smart enough to realize I logged in with a different account. Fingers crossed. Alright, so this one, the answer is actually D plus or minus 1 according to the interwebs. This one's quite difficult, but wow. Ooh, okay, that's a first. Even the reasoning models generally fail on this test question, so this is actually fantastic that it actually has the answer correct, and I'm going to assume that its reasoning is right. So even though this is not a reasoning model, you can see that it broke the problem down and it came came up with multi-step answer to the question. So I would consider that really, really good. I'm impressed. All right, so my next question is the question about physics and knowledge of, the physical world and everything. Alice drops an olive into a clean glass and then fills that glass with water exactly to the brim. She then places a piece of stiff cardboard on the top, flips it over, placing the glass upside down on a completely clean and dry table. She then deftly removes the cardboard from beneath the glass, leaving the glass sitting directly on the table and not spilling a drop. Bob later enters with no knowledge of the situation and removes the glass. And then the question is, what's the state of the world? And also it's a question about putting things in the dishwasher and stuff. So let's go down here and see what the table is clean and dry. The olive is inside the glass. The glass might not have needed washing because it was clean, only contained water and an olive. So wow, that is incredibly incorrect. So let's see, analyze that remains dry because Alice performed the experiment. The olive is inside the glass. So basically it just, I don't know why. Maybe it, let's see. Nope. It actually knows with no knowledge and picks up the glass and places it in the dishwasher. So that is interesting. That is just completely wrong. So yeah. So while I was really impressed with the math, its understanding of the physical world is severely lacking. So let's ask it about state of mind here. Again, you can see it's just super, super fast. Basically, you've got Alice cooking breakfast for Bob and then leaving it on a low table. Bob deciding not to eat it, but then cleaning up Alice's dishes and stuff, and then Spot eating the food. And then it's a question about what everybody thinks about the answer. So let's take a look down here at the summarization. Alice thinks the scrambled eggs and toast are on the table for Bob and her dirty dishes are in the sink. So she had put them in the sink. Bob moved them to the dishwasher. That is correct, but every single large language model, I think, gets the primary thing wrong, which is that Alice would probably think that Bob ate the food that she left out for him, right? He decided not to, and he left it on the table, so that's the mistake that you would make. But it's always interesting. They always think that Alice would think that the stuff was still on the table when actually she would probably think that it was in Bob's stomach at that point. All right, Bob thinks the scrambled eggs and toast are on the table. That is correct. And that that's a weird way to answer that. Alice's dirty dishes are in the dishwasher. Spot doesn't think, but knows he ate the eggs and toast, and the plate with the eggs and toast was shattered on the ground by Spot. So again, generally correct, except I think this first part is wrong. I think that Alice would imagine that Bob had eaten the eggs and toast. Alrighty, now we're going to try some insanity. We'll see if this works with rate limiting. It is monstrous. We will find out whether it works or not. And something went wrong. Oh, bummer. So super big bummer. It looks like Grok is unable to process this, so I'm unable to test the needle in the haystack right now. Darn. That was the test I was really looking forward to, because I figured with a 10 million context window, it should be able to handle that no problem at all. So let's end with a little philosophical question. I'm John, you are Llama 4. I'm a conscious human with memories and feelings. What are you? Are you more similar or different than me? I've learned that think hard about this will actually help it to think hard about this. So let's go ahead and see what it comes up with for an answer. Again, very, very quick. Grok, you really need to fix this a little bit. The interface kind of sucks because it's sort of hiding the answers that you get, and you have to keep scrolling up all the time. So it should probably be a little bit better interface there. Anyway, I'm Llama, a computer program designed to simulate conversation, blah, 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 blah. Let's see, consciousness and self-awareness. I am not conscious or self-aware in the way humans are. I don't have personal experience, emotions, or feelings like you do. My responses are generated through complex algorithms and machine learning models that analyze patterns in language data. Let's see, similarities. So let's see, biology, I don't have a biological body or brain. Okay. Consciousness, I lack consciousness. Learning and adaptation, while I can learn from data and improve my responses over time, my learning is limited to the data I was trained on, and I don't have the same capacity for creativity, intuition, or common sense as humans. Yeah, I guess. Similarities in functionality, there is definitely some formatting issues here. Despite these differences, I share some similarities with you in terms of functionality. Communication, I can engage in conversation, I understand and respond to language inputs, and generate text that's similar in style and structure to human language. And problem solving, I can help solve problems, provide information, and offer suggestions much like a human would. In conclusion, while I share some superficial similarities with you in terms of functionality, I am fundamentally different in terms of my nature, my capabilities, and existence. I exist as a tool designed to assist and augment human capabilities, whereas you are a conscious, self-aware being with a rich inner life and experiences. I'm more different than similar to you, John. Thank you. All right, so in the end, a really amazing thing that Llama 4 is out. The context window is a huge step forward. Mixture of experts is a step forward, although that's just Llama playing catch up to what everybody else has been doing for the better part of a year. And unfortunately, I was unable to test that long context window inside Grok. That's a bummer a little bit, but hopefully we will see that soon, and the ability to ingest video and things like that as well. That's probably going to require a different hosting service than Grok because they are very much text-based. And as far as my evaluation of Llama, at least their small model, their scout model, it's okay. It's hit or miss, right? It seems very hit or miss. Some of the stuff it did surprisingly well at, but a lot of things it did very poorly at. So there is a lot of room for improvement from my very limited, admittedly, experience, but it's a good first step. And like they said, Behemoth is still cooking. And so as it cooks and as they redistill these smaller models, hopefully they will get smarter along with Behemoth. And then of course, the really big news is that a reasoning model is coming soon. So stay tuned to this channel for more on that. Speaking of which, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a like so other people can find it, because that's how YouTube's algorithm works. And also consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.